What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, and thank you guys for tuning in to another video. Back at it again with a BC Lions post-game report, a victory edition finally, folks. It's been a few weeks, not only, but it's been a few post-game reports since we've done a one in winning fashion, as you can see down below. The BC Lions pulling it off 41-38 over the Hamilton Tiger Cats in overtime. A much needed victory. Let me get these banners down, as this is a little distracting, as it isn't the BCFC. We are on the BC Lions post-game report here tonight, folks. So let me get that down for you. But as I said, 41-38, the BC Lions take it. A much needed victory for the BC Lions, as they fell 2 games under 500 not only, but went into the bye last week with a very sour taste in their mouth after the first meeting of the season with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. A very winnable game, as I hate to remind you guys, or I hate to even remind myself and talk about it, but the Lions with a 10-point lead, under 4 minutes to go, 2 weeks ago, as they were on the bye last week against the same Hamilton Tiger Cats team, and they surrender that lead and end up falling at home to the Tiger Cats and really put them, I feel like, at a this season has had its fair share of ups and downs, but definitely going into the bye on a sour note like that, you would think, kind of some soul searching over the bye week, right? Some really an opportunity for the team to kind of look themselves in the mirror and kind of, decide what kind of team they want to be. And tonight wasn't, the prettiest, but at the end of the day, I just tweeted it just a few seconds ago. A win is a win. I know I've said this a few times, whether it be on, the platform here or on our social media feeds. Come, October, November, they don't ask how, they just ask how many, and that's what qualifies you to get into the playoffs, is stacking these wins together. So although it wasn't a pretty one, I'm not trying to twist it and say that. Stacking as many wins as you can at this time of year is as important as possible, especially with the West right now, right? The West is kind of, Saskatchewan and Calgary are in, I feel like, a tier of themselves, rightfully so, but they haven't really pulled away, in a substantial amount. So, Winnipeg, depending on how their matchup goes, is going to be, I believe, we'll have we'll have 4 wins each. Winnipeg, obviously, with the season series, they'll sit ahead of us, but Winnipeg within striking distance, Calgary, Winnipeg. This is the opportunity for BC to start to string together some wins. Unfortunately for BC, I think their best consistency this year has been inconsistency, and it is still, that point in the year where Labor Day still hasn't hit yet. They've put themselves in position to, games after Labor Day are going to matter. This is, as we talked about, I believe, on the post game 2 weeks ago. This is around the time where you're going to want to get hot now, going into September, going into October, getting on a hot streak. This is the time of year when the BC Lions need to start to be at their best and start to put together some wins, right? And I feel like, as I said, with their best consistency being inconsistency, I feel like this year it's been, as we talked about it last post game, I believe, or maybe it was the one before that, of like, this Lions team kind of feels like, they take 1 or 2 steps ahead and they take 3 or 4 steps back, and they kind of win a game here and then they lose 2 or 3 here, and unfortunately aren't able to generate any momentum, aren't able to kind of get that snowball pushed down the hill and starting to turn into a nice 1/3 of your snowman, or whatever it may be. But should be a good one. Should be an exciting one here tonight, folks. Not going to stay too long, as I do work in the morning, as it is Thursday night. One more work day to go. Thank goodness. Although it has, there's probably going to be some people that tune in and are like, "Cool, man. Didn't you have Monday off? It was a long weekend. We had BC long weekend," which, yes, I did. I really enjoyed myself, actually. Was able to actually kind of reset a little bit away from the fanatic side of things. And I do feel good, but it's been a little bit of some getting used to at work this week. We're actually working, for those that maybe, I guess, probably most people aren't aware, but at our local mall over here in Nanaimo. So due to kind of noise restrictions, we're having to start at 5 a.m. So it's a little bit of an early start for myself, a little bit earlier than normal, the work day. So I can definitely feel it tonight that I'm excited to get into bed after this and get the day over tomorrow, because then we are in the weekend. Although I am going to rest for a good majority of tomorrow, I am quite excited for Saturday. I know I've teased this quite a bit on our Inside the BCFC show throughout the season. Would like to do it here now for anybody that's maybe a football fan looking forward to get their fix in this upcoming Saturday. I will be making my color analyst debut on the BCFC TV broadcast for the BI Raiders home games this season. They're kicking off their home opener this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific kickoff at NDSS Turf Field. And as I mentioned, I will be on the broadcast as the game's color analyst. So looking forward to that one. You guys can order those games on BCFC TV. Unfortunately for myself and for the Raiders this year, none of their home games will be on the TELUS featured game of the week in the BCFC. So unfortunately, no TV time for moi, but I will be calling the games throughout the season, which I'm very looking forward to doing. But as I said, if you guys aren't doing anything Saturday night, looking to like I said, looking to get your football fix in, if I can get my words out here, check out BCFC TV, 5:30 kickoff here in Nanaimo, or you guys can check it out on the stream. So before we get into it, 5 minutes, haven't even 6.5 minutes. I haven't even mentioned all of our reminders as I usually do. I'm sure people are quite annoyed, but folks, it is for a good reason as we continue to grow on the platform here. I believe we're just under 20 subscribers to 500, which is a huge accomplishment, a nice round milestone. I know I say huge, and we got all these YouTubers now, but for us, it's kind of a step in the right direction. Right? We're taking steps in the right direction, and we are growing as a platform, which has been awesome to see in the last few months. So if you guys are enjoying today's post-game report, if you guys are enjoying all of our content in the past few months, please be sure to leave a like on all our videos, most specifically this one if you guys are tuning in right now. Also, if you guys are tuning in on YouTube, please feel free to let us know how you guys are feeling in the chat section. Let us know if you guys are Lions fans. You guys should be excited after that one. A nice 41-38 victory, and helps ease a lot of the ugliness. Although you can't ignore all of it, definitely eases a little bit of it anyways. But I'd love to hear how you guys are feeling after that one. I know we have a few regulars from time to time, so I'd love to hear you guys chime in the chat. If you guys aren't listening to us live, definitely feel free to leave a comment down below in the comment section. You guys can still do that if you guys are taking this in afterwards. So lastly, of course, you guys subscribe to the channel. When you guys subscribe, press notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live, like tonight, or we upload any other videos on the channel. So lastly, of course, you guys can find us on our social media platforms at _CFFanatics on Twitter, at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram. I believe that just about does it. Let me give a quick repost here. Let me give a quick, let the people know that they can come tune in and watch tonight's show. I believe that should be it, right? I believe does it. So, wow, what a game, folks. Without I guess without not wanting to jump all over is what I'm trying to say here. This is probably going to be one of those ones where we do jump, because there is quite a bit of good to talk about tonight. I think there is some ugliness to talk about, some bad that's crept up, and kind of been a pattern, a habit for the BC Lions this season, unfortunately. But I guess let's let me start from the beginning and try to do this in order as best as possible. This is where I probably take a big because it was quite frustrating. Although it was a pretty frustrating 4 quarters, if we're being honest. I feel like this would be a little bit of a different post-game report if the Lions ended up on the losing end of things. But as I mentioned, winning here is all. Let's start from the beginning. The BC Lions come out. They end up kicking a field goal, if I'm not mistaken, to start. Were they on the board at that point? I don't know. Let me go back here, folks. I have it right here, so why not go back? So the Lions did start with possession of the football. as the Ticats actually should have kind of maybe put two and two together. Hamilton started with the possession of the football in the second half. What I was saying though is the BC Lions started with the possession of the football, and we got to see, Justin McInnis early, and I wouldn't say often, but we got a sign early that this was going to be a game that the Lions were looking to get Justin McInnis back into rhythm, back into a focal point of this offense. And he was a big part of this offense. We'll get into him a little bit, but he was first completion of the game from Nathan Rourke. I believe it was about a 20-yard completion. Moving the chains down the field, the Lions end up getting in field goal position on that first drive. And unfortunately for them, we're going to talk about it before we get into what happens next for the Lions. But in the first two drives, the Lions were able to move the ball down the field and gain yards, which has been something the Lions have done fairly well at the above average, you could say, when it comes to the numbers. When you go look at the league-wide team stats on the CFL website, most significant offensive categories when it comes to yards per play, yards per game, yards per pass, whatever it may be, the Lions have done a fairly decent job at gaining yards this season. Now, where their big problem has been is the inability, I was going to say the ability not to finish, the inability to finish drives with touchdowns instead of field goals. And that has been, you could argue, one of their biggest, kryptonites this season when it comes to what would their, record look like? What would some of these games look like if they were able to convert on some of these possessions? Something to definitely, wonder about and think about, right? Considering not a lot of these games, but a few of these games the Lions have been in the 2 weeks ago, more specifically. Then there's decisions of, I believe it was at that point you were down 7-3, and we'll get into where the 7 came from. The Lions get the ball in that next possession, and they end up kicking a field goal on 3rd and 2, if I'm not mistaken. Now, obviously, hindsight's 2020, and the Lions end up winning by 3 points. So you need all of them, and this was a very important decision. But I agree with, world record holder, or I guess maybe former world record holder, but friend of the program and friend of mine, Bobby DeBow. I know he's a big Twitter guy who likes to let his opinions known throughout the game, and is very he likes to have a little bit of fun with it, and he was very quick to tweet something about it right away, and that was my first thought as well. Don't love the decision there when I feel like like I said, hindsight's 2020. You know that you're going to get into more than likely a higher scoring type of game with the Bo Levi Mitchell. I feel like touchdowns win you the game more than field goals in that situation. If the Lions were able to go for it and say they convert and they were able to, maybe score some points, that's obviously probably a BC Lions win. If they were to not convert, that could arguably be a BC Lions loss, right? So some of these decisions, obviously hindsight's 2020. You can kind of look at it from both sides of the lens. My personal opinion is I didn't like the decision early on, and that's, you could argue, was a big part of the reason why the Lions went into halftime only up 13-7, having outplayed the Hamilton Tiger-Cats for the entirety of the first half. Up until I believe 5 or 6 minutes remaining in the second quarter, the Tiger-Cats only gained, I believe, 11 total yards of offense. The BC Lions defense was playing pretty well. The BC Lions offense, for those first 2 drives of the game, were moving the football. Outside of that, they started to slow down for the remainder of the half outside of the last possession of the first half. But that being said, as I mentioned, the Lions just need to do a better job. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels this way. Definitely, we're seeing the opinions and people tweeting throughout the game of, the Lions have to finish. This has been something that's been a huge issue for them all season long, and has continued to fall them. Ultimately, it doesn't hurt them this game, but it's something that the Lions desperately need to fix and course correct, or just even, I guess I'm kind of even beating a dead horse with this, but just find a solution, because there's wins out there for the Lions to have, and with the West probably shaping up to be how close it's gonna finish. Every win down the stretch here is going to be very critical for their playoff hopes at staying in the West. Obviously, a crossover opportunity could be there, and I joked about it last week, I believe. As Blake reminded, no crossover team has ever won the Grey Cup, so you want to come through the West. Obviously, there's first for everything, and something like that can happen. But if you're crossing over, you're kind of hoping on the East playing bad more so than you going out there and earning, and I don't want to say earning like they didn't earn a playoff spot, but truly earning a playoff spot in that position that you didn't get into the back door through a loophole kind of situation. So something the Lions desperately need to fix. Also, something that the Lions desperately need to fix is kind of their, return coverage as well as their return game. And we'll talk about their return game later on, but as far as their return coverage, I feel like multiple times now throughout the season they've given up big returns, setting up other teams in basically automatic scoring position, automatic field goal range, whatever it may be, and has cost the Lions, has hurt the Lions desperately, and it did early on in the game, especially with you could argue, a double-edged sword of, not only is it, I don't know why I can't remember his name. Is it Wooden? I believe it's Wooden, if I'm not mistaken. What's his name? Yeah, Isaiah Wooden. Not only is it a double whammy of he returns to the house, a guy that the BC Lions had in-house last year and decided to go away from him because of Scary Terry, who put no fear into opposing defense. I promise you that. And that's no slight at Terry as a person, as a teammate. From all reports, Terry was a fabulous person on the BC Lions in that locker room. But at the end of the day, can anyone that's maybe tuning in or watching this afterwards remember a significant Terry Williams play outside of the Ottawa Redblacks? Was it the missed field goal return for a touchdown, which you could argue was a huge play throughout his career, right? I believe 2 or 3 years he spent as the BC Lions kick returner. He does his job once in 3 years, and maybe something to celebrate. Personally, I don't find that as a win or as a a successful tenure as a returner. I thought there was a lot more to be desired when Terry Williams is returning the football. I know there was, the numbers behind his return yards and average or whatever was fairly decent or whatever to keep him around. But that being said, it's just a little bit even harder to see when guys like Isaiah Wooden are out there. You turn him away and say basically you're not good enough. We have a guy that's basically better, and you cut him, and it was not picked up. So Terry Williams is currently a free agent, and obviously Isaiah Wooden left the game with injury, but he has looked fantastic. Very exciting player for the Ticats here this season, and was a huge gut punch for sure for the Lions of, outside of that play, they outplayed the Hamilton Tiger-Cats for the rest of the first half. And for the rest of the first half, it was fairly quiet, as I mentioned. The Lions, outside of those 2 possessions early on, they came away with 2 field goals. Could have very well been 2, touchdowns where it could have been, 14-7, even 10-7, where they had the lead. For up until the end, that minute, last drive that I think was minute and 30 seconds or something like that, left for the BC Lions. Might actually even been less time. I think I'm thinking of the final drive where they had a minute and 38 seconds. Could have even been less time on the clock to end the half. And I guess that's where we can go right away, actually, as I mentioned. Not a lot happened for the remainder of the half, but the BC Lions were able to capitalize to end the half with possession of the football and put up some points, go into the locker room with the lead. Huge opportunity for the Lions, and they capitalized. And it started with a huge play to Nathan Work from Aiden Eberhardt down the sideline, where Aiden Eberhardt had beat his defender, and Nathan put it up a fairly catchable ball. I think if it was maybe, it was almost a tad outside of his kind of, I feel like his comfortable stride length, where he was able to keep going at his full strength, he being Aiden Eberhardt. I feel like just because it was slightly in front of him and a little bit high, it kind of almost took Aiden Eberhardt out of his full speed and allowed Amos to kind of knock him out of bounds. Nonetheless, was a fantastic play from Nathan, was a fantastic play from Eberhardt to convert it and set the Lions up in basically automatic scoring position, whether they were going to get a field goal or a touchdown, and was capped off by James Butler, if I'm not mistaken. Or was that the Masoli touchdown? I believe that was James Butler. Excuse me, I was wrong on that one. That was the Javon Catoy touchdown where he broke not only one, not only two, not only three, but four defenders' tackles. You could argue he broke one defender's tackles and then just ran through the other three, which was fantastic to see. Javon, obviously, as you guys know, big fan of Catoy on this channel as a CGFL alumni. I still feel like I'm Dwayne Ford's out there as well, talking about it on the broadcast of the hidden gem that is Javon Catoy, and I feel like a lot more to be had out there, a lot more potential if his workload was up there, and it's unfortunate just how, I guess, valuable he is in other areas. And when it comes to, being in basically an inline, I don't want to say tight end, fullback, but being in line a lot of the times, being asked to be in the blocking schemes, not only in running situations, but in passing downs from time to time. Javon Catoy will be asked to come into the backfield and pick up in pass protection, whether that's releasing a guy like James Butler out of the backfield, who we'll talk about him in a second. But fantastic effort by Javon Catoy, and would love to see him continue to play well and answer the bell when his number is called. I don't think that's the saying. Answer the bell when the number is called. Second guessing myself now. And as I mentioned, I still think there is another level for him to get to down the stretch. So was great opportunity for the Lions, and they cashed in, taking the 13-7 lead at halftime off of the Javon Catoy touchdown and a bomb from Nathan Rourke to Eden Eberhardt. As I mentioned, I believe, let me check here. I believe it was under that minute 38. I want to say that minute 38 was the last. A minute 17 was the last scoring drive for sure. So this is where things get a little bit interesting for how we're going to turn things around here, because I think we're going to transition into the defense now a little bit before we come back to the offense to end things. And the defense, as I said earlier, and I hate kind of beating a dead horse, and I don't want to, and that's why I feel like we've tried to adapt a little bit here tonight, because for the majority of the game, it was the same old for the BC Lions. Their best consistency is inconsistency. And another one of their things I tweeted out during the game, the Lions have had their ups, their downs, just like any other team throughout the season, throughout a long season, right? NFL, CFL, college, youth sports, CGFL. Every team's going to have their ups and downs. Now, where I think my struggle with it is that the lack, I guess, of complementary football for the BC Lions this season. Where, as I mentioned, the offense has played fairly well for a majority of the season, for being quite honest, other than the execution standpoint. The Lions hurt themselves so much, and I don't want to discredit other teams, because I feel like people want to call me a homer, and Cole, you're maybe saying things with your heart a little bit too much. But if you're being honest and you watch these games from a more of a non-biased standpoint, the Lions hurt themselves, I feel like, more than, and maybe this is me being a little bit more biased because I don't watch other teams with the microscope I do watch the Lions with. But for me, the Lions' inability to play complementary football hurts them so much as well, because in the first half, when the defense is playing great for the first time in a while, right? Containing a guy like Levi Mitchell, containing a guy like Kenny Lawler, who made a fantastic catch, I might add, in this game. Whether it was a catch or not, that's a conversation for another day. The fact that he even got it to be, he even reeled that in to be a possibility of a catch is another thing. They're doing a fantastic job. They pitched a shutout for the entire first half, other than the punt return, which is not on them. But the offense isn't able to capitalize on it, is unable to show up, is unable to put up more than, outside of obviously the last touchdown, 6 points, 2 field goals, so that you can't pull away from Hamilton. Hamilton's still in the game, so that when you do get that touchdown to end the half, it's only a one-score game, and then Hamilton comes out and takes the lead right back. I believe it was a minute or two into the second half. There are other problems that I'll start with one that has been a problem for the majority of the season outside of, I believe, the first game. Penalties. The Lions have been huge, are just shot themselves in the foot time and time again when it comes to penalties. Maybe not necessarily in a few games, it's been by volume of penalties. And sometimes tonight, more specifically, without looking at how many they took, as I'm trying to bring it up here, 8 for 65. The number doesn't look too bad when you look at 8 for 65. You know, you could stomach that. For me, it's the time and place when the Lions get a big first down and they get a procedure call, or when the Lions get a completion and it's an offsides call. Those are huge drive killers as well. Taking you out of field goal position, taking you off the field if you're the offense. Turnovers is another thing. Seven McGee fumbles the punt return late in the game. Nathan Rourke late in the fourth quarter. Now, obviously, this is going to be probably a little bit swept under the rug because of the win, right, and the scoring drive. But I don't know if actually I've said this yet, but I believe there is a saying of, don't accept nothing you wouldn't don't accept nothing you wouldn't in a win that you wouldn't in a loss, right? And these are the things that, as I said, it's a completely different conversation, and we're obviously lucky to benefit from that. It's a complete conversation that, we're on the winning side of things this week, but turnovers, penalties, lack of complementary football. This team has, I feel like, bitten them in the ass time and time again throughout the season, and has collectively been their biggest kryptonite, you could argue. So let's get into the second half quickly, and then we'll kind of get a little bit of a bow on things. I want to talk about the complementary football, right? You get into the second half, and the defense can't stop a freaking running sink, a bleeding nose. And then the offense, puts up some points. They did a fairly good job. So it was somewhat of the opposite, I guess, right? Where the first half, the defense is playing lights out. The offense is a little bit sluggish. Second half, defense can't stop anything. Offense is scoring. So it's just a frustrating thing when not wanting to take away from the other team, because they are professionals. They do earn their victories, rightfully so, by, putting in their preparation and being professionals. But the Lions, man, continue to shoot themselves in the foot, win or loss. And this is a night that they're going to get away with it because of being on the other side of things. So when looking at the second half, I mean, it was quite frustrating. As I said, what is it? Bing, bing, bing. 2 plays. So the kickoff happens. They get a 54-yard deep pass to Tim White down the middle of the field. And then on the next play, Jabani Robinson, another ex-BC Lion who was up on the team in training camp a few years ago, I want to say 22 or 23, up in Kamloops. And, of course, the Lions respond with a touchdown, which was a great sign that I feel like maybe in previous games, previous weeks, this team would have maybe rolled over that quickly, of, started to panic, started to, oh boy, here we go again. I feel like this team needs to prove themselves in these close games that they can, stay composed. They have a little bit of composure. They did tonight, which was fantastic to see, because for the remainder of the second half, I mean, it was basically tit for tat of, a shootout here where I believe Hamilton went back, scored on their next possession. So they were 2 for 2 to start the second half. I believe, yeah, so the fumble was next as both teams started to quiet out on their next 2 drives. The Seven McGee fumble happened, unfortunately, and it's just a tough one to see when I don't know what your solution is now, 10 weeks into the season, number one. You've already went through 2 returners pretty much. And when those returners were down, I know you've had, I think, Robert Carter back there, and I feel like the player that Robert Carter is, you probably don't want to waste his energy and stamina on those reps, taken away from his defensive performance. What do you do here where I feel like Seth McGee just, first of all, the ball was out of his catch radius or I don't know what do you want to say, his wingspan, and he tried to last minute catch it where that's a decision. You just got to make that decision, man. You got to, I'm catching this one in the air. I'm not catching this in the air. I'm in position. I'm not. And that was one where I feel like he didn't know whether or not he was close enough to catch it or he was a little bit too far out of range. One, you just got to let hit the dirt. You have no yards. Let the ball bounce. Take a breath, relax, pick the ball up, and go on your return. Instead, he tries to panic and get it on the fly, ends up fumbling it, costs them a touchdown, which, as I mentioned, the defense gets a stop after the Lions just go 2-0. Looks like maybe the Lions were able to benefit from that, and no, just like that, the Ticats were able to go down, score a touchdown, and take possession of the lead. Now, good thing for the Lions that they were able to capitalize, where Seb McGee was able to make up somewhat, you could say, for his prior mistake, and he was able to generate a pretty substantial kick return. I believe it was about an 80-yarder, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 82-yard return that set up the BC Lions in scoring position right away, right off the bat, and they were able to capitalize. I believe not the following play, the next play after that, if I'm not mistaken. 3 plays actually, correction. And was capped off by a Riley Pickett 2-point conversion to tie things up. So another shout out to Riley Pickett, another fellow CJFL alum. Actually, both guys actually, I guess, on the Lions that actually shouldn't say both guys. There's a five alumni on the Lions, I believe, from CJFL ties. But he's one that I have ties playing against. So when it comes to the fourth quarter, I mean, this is an interesting one to have because I feel like we maybe just need to get into the Nathan Rourke conversation. This is a different conversation to have because for people that know or for people that tune in, it should not be a surprise of, how big of a Nathan Rourke fan I am, supporter I am of him. You could argue maybe the biggest out there. And I know there's their fair share of, there's, Justin Dunk, there's obviously the Lions organization. I feel like, and I get it from a marketing standpoint as well, that the CFL wants to just like capitalize on all this, which I understand, like I'm saying, but I just feel like sometimes, especially with like the whole like most of the Standing Canadian thing came out. Marshall Ferguson put together his little ballot or whatever of who he thinks is the candidates for the most outstanding Canadian through 5 weeks. Now, what I would say is that, as I said, big, huge fan of Nathan Rourke. This is not meant to sound like a slight or I guess just a slight. I feel like this is more to do with my expectations that I have in Nathan Rourke. But to me, the headline will be tomorrow morning and even tonight will be Nathan Rourke plays fantastic, great football game. And I think at periods of time, he did play fairly well. I just don't think I can get on board with saying that he played great. And I think that comes more to do with the conversation with the body of work this season. When it comes to, a guy like Marshall Ferguson, putting him in as his number one candidate for most outstanding Canadian. And as I said, this pairs with my expectations for Nathan Rourke as a player, which I hold him arguably in the highest honor. So maybe you could say, comment down below. Cole, you're crazy. 400-yard game, 2 touchdowns. What did he rush for? I believe another chipped in 28 yards, so modest day through the on the ground. But 24 of 40, 408 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. And that's where I wanted to get into because the pick came pretty much after that point when the Lions tied things up after the 2-point conversion. Things were fairly quiet. Both teams were trying to throw their counter punches back and forth to grab hold of momentum in the fourth quarter. The BC Lions end up getting possession of the football and look to go and either win the game or take a lead and give Hamilton back possession of the football with not a lot of time left on the clock. And unfortunately for Nathan Rourke, he throws a ball that he got fooled on because of the defense, what the defense was in, the coverage they were in, with dropping one of the defensive linemen, only rushing 3. They end up dropping Julian Hauser into coverage. And having experience playing quarterback, having experience being a shorter quarterback, unfortunately, understanding that sometimes you have to throw through windows, sometimes your vision is blocked. And when you say sometimes, you're almost, downplaying that of, a lot of the time your vision is blocked and you're throwing through windows and stuff like that. I would imagine Julian Hauser never came into the vision of Nathan Rourke during that play. Now, that being said, I still think the ball wasn't great. I think you could argue that Devin Varasek might have fell under that football as well and picked it off. But it wasn't an unacceptable, mistake from Nathan Rourke, and I think he would tell you that himself. I'm interested to go back and be able to check out post games. Back to, I guess, what I was kind of saying of like Nathan Rourke for me this season isn't a top 5 most outstanding Canadian candidate, in my opinion. I think Nathan Rourke is playing good football this year. I don't think he's playing great football this year. For whatever reason, it's that small little bit that just seems off, whether it's the high throws, some of the missed throws, some of the, I'm trying to think, I guess, sometimes he's making these split-second decisions, and we saw in 22 more often than not, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, he made the right decision. And obviously small sample size, so throughout a longer career, obviously sometimes it's going to start to happen, right? And who knows what could happen? As I said, we're in week 10. What happens down the remainder of the stretch here? If Nathan Rourke's able to put together a remarkable rest of the year, maybe he goes out to win a most outstanding Canadian. He's put himself in position to at least be around the conversation, to be at least in the conversation. I don't hate it. I just don't, he's not on my ballot of putting together a ballot, right? Of Damien Elford, Keandre Smith, who we saw tonight get back in the paint after his big performance versus the Lions a few weeks ago. A guy like Nick Dembski turning back the clock a little bit here, 5-6 touchdowns on the season. Isaac Bergelin. Who are the other guys? I'm missing Adrian Green right now. Can't think if I'm missing anybody else off the top of my head. But there's candidates. Nathan Rourke has some competition. It's not just, let's give it to Nathan Rourke. He's a quarterback. He's, the base of Canadians in the league. It could be an interesting thing to watch. And as I said, I think this has a little bit more to do with my expectations overall, more so than me I'm not trying to dump on Nathan Rourke and saying he's playing bad. I'm just saying that some of these throws, right, could be the difference of winning in regulation opposed to overtime. I feel like that's what I'm more saying of like, it's not Nathan's, say 50 snaps a game, 50 attempts a game. It's the maybe 5 to 6 that are maybe getting away from him per game that we just aren't used to as well. That's the thing that I'm just I feel like more questioning more so than wanting to kind of bury Nathan right now. But that being said, the Lions were able to benefit, I guess, from that, where they throw a pick, looks like curtains. Looks like, oh man, this is who the BC Lions are. They just can't get out of their own way this season. Jokes on Cole. They end up getting a stop. They end up getting the ball back with 1:38, as I mentioned, and going down the field and kicking a, what was it, a game time? Or no, actually, no, sorry, my mistake. Actually, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. They actually had to. So when they left minute 30. Excuse me, I was wrong on that too. I don't know where I'm getting the minute 38 from. Weird, unless the clock was maybe running on that one. But minute 47 is when the Lions took over with possession of the football. They end up scoring with 38 seconds left. Maybe that's where I'm getting it from. And then Tigers took over possession with the football, and I tweeted out that the defense must get a stop in this situation. Absolutely unacceptable to surrender something like this. Now, obviously, 38 seconds, a little bit of a different story, especially in the CFL when the play clock stops after every play, but just felt similar, as you guys can see behind me. Buffalo Bills fan. Didn't feel similar because I will admit that nothing will quite feel similar to 13 seconds, but felt somewhat like 13 seconds of like, man, just how can you guys not get a stop in that situation? Now, obviously, I believe it was Shamar Bridges who makes a fantastic back shoulder catch on a ball from Bo Mitchell, who I'd be curious to know if Bo would even admit this, but if he meant to do back shoulder, if that's just kind of how the ball ended up, because it was perfectly placed in relation to where the defender was. I believe it was Robert Carter who was in coverage, and first gain of the drive for the Ticats, they're in field goal position already with probably 30 seconds in counting, which was just even more of a gut punch for Lions fans because it felt like, oh man, like how can you, like why in this situation you guys are unable to get off the field. But that being said, the Ticats go down the field, kick the field goal to send it into overtime. And in overtime, folks, is where maybe good things happen. We can start to talk about some happy things and kind of put a bow on the post-game report here a little bit. The Ticats, well, I guess I should start with the Sean White. What a call in overtime there. I believe it was tails never fails, as we should all be aware. The Lions win the toss and elect to go on defense first, giving the ball to the Ticats first. The Ticats start with possession of the football. They end up, I believe, getting a completion or two, and then the BC Lions end up forcing a fumble, and is like, oh boy, here we go. All you have to do is just get a field goal, score some points, and you end up getting a victory, get on the plane, and get back out west. And we'll enjoy this one, and we'll watch the tape in the morning and see what we can learn and get better from. And basically, is what happened. The Lions could have went much conservative and could have just ran a couple plays and then ended up kicking the ball. They ended up wanting to feed James Butler, get as close as possible, and I believe they ended up probably picking up 3 or 4 first downs there to get it as close as possible to forward Sean White, as I mentioned, and he ends up kicking. Unfortunately, I want to say Mr. Automatic tonight, but unfortunately, Whitey missed one. His consecutive streaks comes to an end here tonight. He starts himself a new one, and I believe it was on the game winner itself. So fantastic. As I said a few times, this was a much different conversation if the Lions weren't able to pull this out. That being said, I've said it a few times, not only tonight, throughout our history of post-game reports, Twitter Spaces, you name it. They don't ask how, they just ask how many. The Lions have done a... See, I don't want to give them too much credit in saying it. They've done a good job. They've done a all right job of keeping themselves in the hunt, keeping themselves in position for games after Labor Day to matter and to be big games. That's where you want to be. Pressure makes diamonds or bust pipes. right? So either you crumble or you get pressure and you rise to the occasion, and maybe this Lions team goes on a run. I'm still a little hesitant to believe that far. I still, unfortunately, to maybe get as positive as we have been tonight, and we're going to get a little bit more positive as well. I would say to maybe be a little bit negative here tonight until proven otherwise, until maybe you go on a little bit of a 2 or 3 game win streak. I think the Lions team has proven that, as I've already said, their best consistency is inconsistency. Winning a game or two, losing a game or two, or losing a game 2, 3, or 4. That's why they're in the position they've been in. That being said, though, let's get into a few positives to end tonight. James frickin' Butler. Where do we start with James Butler? Well, for one, I'm going to start with James Butler is the best running back in the CFL right now. And I don't think that is a hot take. I don't think that is unfair to any of the running backs right now. Dedrick Mills playing very well. Brady Oliveira, maybe consensus #1 running back. AJ Ouellette, you name it, playing well. James Butler is the best running back in the CFL right now. You can even mention, his counterpart over in Hamilton tonight, Greg Bell, playing fairly well this season. James Butler, not only as a runner, out of the backfield, and just all assets as a running back, he is fantastic at. As I said actually last week, of like he's done everything well, but hold on to the football and those few turnovers that he's had this year of, whether it's the drops. I know he had actually one that could have been a crazy Nathan Rourke little shovel pass on a little escape play from Rourke that ended up falling incomplete. But James Butler, 14 carries, 85 yards, 1 touchdown, 6.1 yards per carry, and chipped in with 4 receptions, 55 yards, 1 reception. So what is that? Sorry, I'm trying to do quick mental math here on the fly, and I need to do. So I believe James Butler, if my math is correct, 18 total touches for 140 total yards and 2 touchdowns on the evening for one James Butler, who, as I mentioned, took care of the football tonight. Maybe would like to see him hold on to the one football from Nathan Rourke. Did his job with flying colors. When his number was called upon, he stepped up, especially, like I said, it's not only that he can catch the ball in the backfield, he can run the ball between the tackles. He's shifty, he's elusive, right? He's a perfect blend as a running back. I think overall, I don't think I necessarily disagree that as a consensus or as maybe a longer body of work, Brady Oliveira is probably the best running back in the CFL. But all around running back, I'm taking James Butler 9 times out of 10, even with Brady Oliveira. I'm telling you guys right now, especially with a quarterback like Nathan Rourke, who will get him the football and find ways to utilize him as best as possible. Next, positive, Justin McInnis. Wow, did he need that game in a big way. 8 receptions, 159 yards, no touchdowns, but fantastic all evening. Did his job in a big way. 68 yards after the catch, 19.9 yards, basically 20 yards per catch, 12 targets. So had some other opportunities left out there. As I mentioned, with the couple missed footballs, high from Nathan Rourke tend to kind of happen with, maybe a guy like Justin McInnis. Maybe that's just kind of par for the course. That being said, Justin has been quiet, right? We had kind of shrugged it off his quiet start, although the quiet start he had been, top 10, top 5 in most receiving categories. Chalked it off to, Masoli started those 2 games. Nathan, missed 2.5 of those games. Nathan comes back and virtually it was like Justin McInnis was hurt. Or it was like Justin McInnis was kind of a forgotten piece to the offense. It had been very quiet over the last few games, about a month or so of the season. And as I said, he desperately needed this one. 150 plus yards on the game. No touchdowns, but did his job tonight in a big way, considering a guy like Keon Hatcher had himself an off night. And that's going to happen. Throughout a long season, 21 weeks, 18 games, you're going to have you're going to have your B game for a game or two. You're going to have your C game for maybe a game or two as well. So just unfortunately, it happens throughout a long season. It's a good problem to have that guys like Justin McInnis step up, Aiden Eberhardt steps up, right? You like to maybe see some of those guys consistently step up a little bit more, in guys like Stanley Berryhill, Katoy. I know we talked about earlier. Katoy, it does have a little bit of consistency from time to time, but I think Katoy is more so with workload and opportunities more so than anything. But again, there's only one football, so it's kind of hard to justify getting the ball out of Keon Hatcher, Justin McInnis, James Butler's hands to get it more into Javon Katoy's hands. So good stuff from them. Off game from Hatch, but I would expect Keon Hatcher. It's maybe a little bit of the dad life maybe wearing off on him, as I believe he did welcome. I hope I'm getting this right, but he did welcome a new. I was going to say, instead of a new baby boy or a new baby girl, a new baby to the world. So shout out to him and Mrs. Hatcher. But maybe it was a late night for Hatch for a few nights this week, and maybe just wasn't on his A game. So other than that, I think the last thing to chat about, and probably is a little bit of a, I guess, some context matters when having this conversation. The offensive line, and I think it's a tricky conversation to have. I had a little bit of a back and forth with Bobby, who I mentioned earlier on Twitter, of yes, the offensive line has played fairly well for a majority of this season. I believe we are towards the bottom of the league in terms of sacks given up, which is a great sign to have. I think that also plays into the quarterback you had. But this is also me just giving some of the context to this conversation, right? When I talk about the good and the bad from the offensive line this year. And I think you could argue that when looking at maybe a pie chart or a percentage, something like that, I would say that 80% of the time the offensive line has played fairly good. It's 20% of the time that they haven't. And it's unfortunate that 20% of the time has kind of came up in timely situations, whether it be second down, whether it be fourth quarter, going into the half. They give up sacks to get them out of field goal position. Injuries as well. They've been pretty ravaged throughout on the offensive line. When you look at the starters this week, or even in the past weeks, I believe the first Hamilton game was probably the first indicator of how banged up the offensive line was. This game again, virtually a backed up offensive line outside of the left side with Jarrell Broxton and Corey Woodruff. Broxton goes down, leaves the game for a little bit. I know he returned to the game. Was definitely a huge, if you're a BC Lions fan, pause a breath. Please be okay. Please be okay. He got up, returned to the game, as I mentioned, but just a tough one to kind of have with the offensive line, who they played well. I want to give them their flowers. I want to give them their kudos, because they have been the butt of a lot of bad jokes. They've been criticized quite a bit over the last half a decade, literally half a decade, going back to the Mike Riley days, out of the COVID pandemic, and even before, I guess, Mike Riley 2019 season. And they've somewhat brought some stability to it. I would still like them to try to get better, take swings along the interior of the offensive line. Like I said with Blake, though, that's not guaranteed. Just because the grass, you say the grass is greener on the other side, it isn't always green on the other side. So just because you take that swing doesn't mean it's a guarantee that you're able to find a replacement. So without wanting to pile on to the big boys too much, because I think at the end of the day, they did a fantastic job for allowing Nathan Rourke to 26 to 40, 400 yards, drop back, give him some clean pockets from time to time, and allow him to do his thing, although there was some muddy pockets from time to time as well. So other than that, folks, that will do it for another post-game report here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed all of our BC Lions coverage this season. I apologize once again, folks, for having to axe our previews this year. Just unfortunately with the workload, me working a 9 to 5 regularly, so this kind of putting more under my plate, having to just take some off of it, unfortunately, due to just you only have so many hours in the day. I would love to do it. I would love to continue to upload those and film those with other content creators and other people that are following other teams. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but with working for the BCFC and now like actually officially working for them, having to do stuff, it's just been something that I've had to take a step back from, and wanting to make sure that we give you guys our post game reports still on a weekly basis. We're going to lean into that and make sure we're doing it on a live basis. Although nobody tuned in or chimed in on the chat tonight, I really enjoy that aspect of it from time to time when people tune in and let us know how they're feeling. Let us know how they're reacting to some of these wins, right? Because your opinion could be much different than mine, and I like and encourage people to chime in when their opinion is different. That's what makes us human beings. That's what makes us unique to other species and animals or mammals, I should say. Other than that, trying to think of any other my reminders. I guess the last thing to do, of course, with working with the British Columbia Football Conference, as we are all BC Lions fans, there should be. I'm sure there is some CFL fans maybe tuning in, but if you guys haven't, tonight is Thursday, tomorrow will be Friday. Saturday kicks off week number 4 in the British Columbia Football Conference. We have arguably the matchup of the week. I won't say that though, but one of the matchups of the week with the West Shore West Shore Rams. Holy smokes, Cole. It's getting late. It's time to get a little bit of bite to me and go to bed. The West Shore Rebels hosting the Okanagan Sun in a battle for first place and for bragging rights early on in the season here. Really looking forward to catching a little bit of that game before the 5:30 kickoff. But 4 o'clock we have the Langley Rams hosting the Kamloops Broncos. Should be another exciting matchup at 4 o'clock on Saturday as well. You guys can find the 2 of those ones on BCFC TV, as well as one of those 2 will be the TELUS game of the week. So you guys can find that on TELUS channel 19 something. I can't remember off the top of my head, to be quite honest. And then 5:30, folks, as I mentioned it, my color analyst debut for the Vancouver Island Raiders this season, as I will be on the broadcast all year long, doing the games with my partner, Noah Atnikoff. Looking forward to that one, as Noah will be my play-by-play man. Really looking forward to it, not only because I enjoy football, I enjoy watching football like that. I feel like me and Noah have a really good chemistry when talking football together, and I feel like we're going to be able to put together a fairly good product for the fans and viewers at home. So I would encourage everyone that if you guys, as I said, looking for a little bit of a football fix on a Saturday, I know there'll be some CFL, maybe a little bit of NFL preseason as well. Throw us on your laptop, throw us on whatever it may be, your tablet, Mac, laptop, whatever it may be that you guys have, your phone even. You guys can find the game at BCFC TV. Their subscription packages, you guys can check it out for 3 games. I believe you could pay like one total price instead of the $25 per game over a weekend, or there is a season pass as well. But support the BCFC is a great product. Dwayne Ford mentioned on the broadcast tonight of a lot of hidden gems, a lot of some unturned, untapped potential that is in the CJFL. As I mentioned, with 5 current BC Lions: Javon Catoy, Riley Pickett, Sean White, Kieran Prasant, Jacob Bond, just to name a few, Adam Konar as well. So I believe that will do it for a BC Lions post-game report 41-38 victory edition. If you guys enjoyed it, once again, please be sure to leave a like on the video. Comment down below how you guys are feeling. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel. When you guys subscribe to the channel, press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload video like this one. You guys will see me back again next week for our Inside the BCFC coverage, as well as our weekly show over on the 13th Man Sports YouTube channel. And then we'll be back next Saturday for a BC Lions post-game report, which we should be in attendance. BC Lions back at home to take on the Montreal Alouettes next week. Once again, folks, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Signing off for a 41-38 BC Lions victory. We'll catch you guys next week.